Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to today's Cuppa with Katie. Oh my goodness, I've been having an absolute ball the last week and a half chatting to a different woman every week about her next level love story. So I've kind of taken over my Cuppa with Katie show, and we're doing next level love interviews. And today I'm so excited to be speaking with Andrea Binks. Hello, Andrea. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having
Hi.
me.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for putting yourself forward to share your love story.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
exciting. So, where in the world are you right now?
I am in Essex, so I'm in a
Hmm.
place called Thurrock. So I actually grew up in Essex, just down the road. Actually, I grew up in Canvey Island, but I then
Ah,
moved to Thurrock to sort of have my family, if you like.
yes. Okay. So, let's just actually start by exploring the work that you do in the world. What's your work?
Okie dokie. So I am a divorce and breakup coach. So I
Mm,
help people who are either in the middle of going through a breakup or divorce, have been through a breakup and divorce, or those who are at the sort of very start of the journey, or even actually sort
mm,
of getting to the stage where they're considering it, they're sort of maybe lost along the way within the relationship. And I help all those kind of people sort of find their way through and back
mm.
onto a positive path.
And is there something around your own journey that had you start doing this work, or have you always like why are you doing this work?
Okay. Yes. So I
There's going to be a
actually
story.
went. That's okay. I went through a very, very messy divorce. Um, so I met my ex-husband now when I was 18. We were both in a show together,
Wow. Okay.
and we got together, and we were together for 20 years. So that was our sort of whole story, was a 20. So it was at the point we broke up, I had been with him for more than half of my life, which was quite scary. I was convinced he was my soulmate, my best mate, my partner in life, um, everything. And unfortunately, it wasn't to be. It wasn't going to be the happy ever after that we all kind of, I guess, grow up believing that, we grow up, we have our family, we have our children, we meet the person, and it's just happens and it's happy. And it didn't
Yeah.
happen that way for me, unfortunately. So yeah, I did have a very, very messy divorce. um, it took 5 years actually to go through the whole process from finding out, because my ex had an affair, so that's why we actually broke up. So it was infidelity. So I found out in 2014, and I finally, we were finally divorced in 2019. And I'm actually quite pleased to say at the moment that we're actually on the, because we share two children together, and that's
Hmm.
never going to change. And we went from being best friends to absolute enemies to back onto the path now where we can actually communicate and we can have a nice conversation together.
Yeah.
um, and that's something actually that I'm very, very passionate about, is that, and I do this with my coaching, is that even through those hard times, it can get better.
Yeah.
I know everybody's story is different, and there are lots of other circumstances that create a breakup.
Yeah.
But I fully believe that if we there are certain processes to put into place, and I fully
Hmm.
believe that you can still live a very, very happy life. You can find love again, as I have, and you can rebuild those communication
Mm.
levels with the person that was you thought was supposed to be the one, if you like. So
Yes.
whether that stays the same, I don't know. But at the moment, we're amicable, so it's good.
Amazing. How old were you when you decided to get a divorce?
Well, let's see. So, gosh, it was 2014, and I was born in 77.
Whatever
Let's
that
work that one out.
is.
So I
I
am
can't do the maths.
no. So I guess I'm 43 now. I'll be 44 this
Mm.
year. And what is that? It's
Hmm.
21. So you've got to go back 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
7 years
Okay. So
of
in your
44, let's
late
say.
30s.
But I mean, it wasn't, I didn't decide when I found out that he was having an affair. It wasn't okay, it's over. It was a very lengthy process, and he actually didn't move out of the family home until 2016.
Right.
And it was then, I guess it was along that process. It was probably in 2015 that I decided, actually, this isn't going to work. This isn't for me. I don't want this life. So, yeah. So probably 2015 to now. So 6 years ago.
So when that ended, and it sounds like you got married thinking that this was a forever thing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I was 18 when I met him, and he was great. We got on so well. We were best friends. He was really funny, and we had a bit of a sort of turbulent relationship, because I think at the age of 18, he was 25, because he's 8 years my senior. So I think that, I was just straight out of dance college. So I think we did have our ups and downs, but I think that's kind of normal at that sort of age. And then and we sort of spent about 7 years together, and then we had a bit of a break, and then we came back together again. So we both sort of like were together relatively young, I guess, 18, 25, not so much, but 18 for me. And then we sort of spent 7 years together, separated for a couple of years, stayed in touch all the time, got back together, and I thought that was for keeps. Because I thought, well, we've come back together after a break. It's meant to be.
Yeah, yeah. It's a long time, though, isn't it? I mean, the more I have these conversations, and the expectation to be with someone forever, particularly when you meet so young, I mean, that's a lot. And we all, as you're a coach, that we're always growing and evolving as individuals. And can the relationship sustain that? Can you grow and evolve side by side? Can you both be allowed to grow and evolve? Can you keep it on track together?
That's right.
That's it's a big ask. It's a really big ask. And it doesn't take the pain away from it. Ends, when it ends and you don't expect it to, even though gosh, it's a big ask to keep a relationship together forever, particularly when you met at 18. My goodness. It's still a big
naturally as well. I think people change. Like, I am not the same person now that I was at the age of 18. No way.
And you're a completely different woman.
Yeah, and I think people either grow together or they grow apart. And I think for me, I think particularly as well with my ex, I just don't think we were compatible in a particular area of our life. We just weren't compatible in that area, and we should have worked that out. We should have worked that out, because I loved him. I would hope that he loved me, since we were together for so long. He has told me that he never ever loved me, but who knows? It doesn't matter anymore. But yeah, I think you sort of, people do, like you say, grow and evolve, and it's whether or not those paths kind of stay connected, or whether or not people are on different paths.
Yeah. So how did you deal with the fallout of that relationship? How did you handle the end of that, the divorce? I guess I'm wondering emotionally.
Do you know what is one of the hardest things to go through? And they say, actually, I've heard it said that a breakup or a divorce is the hardest thing to experience after losing a loved one. But then I've also heard it explained that, and I can understand this, that sometimes it's more difficult because the person is still there. They're just not the same person anymore. Yeah. And you also experience such a lot of heartache, such a lot of, depending on the circumstances. For me, there was betrayal, there was lies, there was deceit. It was just awful. And I think what happened for me was I wanted to be able to help others, which is where I've ended up going with my career. But I wanted to be able to help others that were going through what I was going through, because it was hard. It was really, really hard. It was hard emotionally. It was hard mentally. It was hard physically. It was your entire lives joined and having to pull them apart. Everything you expected your life was going to be suddenly was not. And you're left in this sort of abyss of not really knowing, A, who you are, B, what you really want out of life, because what you thought you wanted has now disappeared. and it just questions everything. And it was really tough. So I decided to retrain to become a counselor, first of all. So I'm still studying that because it takes a long time to become a counselor. So I've been 3 years studying that already, and I'm going into my last year. And it's integrative counselling that I've gone down the route of, which is combining all the modalities of sort of CBT, person-centered, and psychodynamics. So I use all three of those in my work.
Beautiful.
So I went down the route of that. And actually, when you train as a counsellor, you have to have personal therapy.
Of course, yeah.
So I have done a lot of personal therapy, and I've done, with the training, I've done a lot of self-reflection, and I am a completely different person. I feel more like me. And this probably sounds strange, but I am, and I think a lot of people are like this. I tend to absorb the people around me. I tend to sort of take on some of their likes and dislikes. So the kind of person I was as a child, I sort of lost that person in my relationship with my ex-husband, and that was 20 years worth. So I lost who I was, and I really feel now that I'm back to who I was, although different because I'm older, so I've got experience behind me. But yeah, definitely the self-reflection, the learning to take your self-worth from your internal aspirations opposed to externally, because we do that a lot. We want to please other people. We worry about what other people think of us. We do what other people say because we think they're right. Whereas now my self-worth comes from within. And that is a lot of because of the journey I've been on. And that's, again, what I teach in my work with my clients, is how to find that and how to harness that for the better.
Yes. So am I understanding you right, that your response to the shock and the pain of going through divorce was to dive into counseling training, which began your own healing and coming home to yourself?
Yeah, for me it was because I was offered counselling through the doctors because I was struggling. So I was very upset most of the time. I had terrible anxiety that he could say something and my anxiety would just rise, and you get physical, sometimes you can get physical sensations, and I would feel sick. I'd be a little bit shaky. So I went to the doctors and they recommended counselling. And because when you go through a breakup or divorce, you experience a similar cycle that you do when you lose a loved one. So there is sort of a pattern that you follow. And
it's a total grief cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you're absolutely grieving something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was offered group counselling, and I remember turning up for this session, and I was sort of busying around my day. I was busy. I was having a good day, and I went into this session, but everybody was there that they'd actually suffered bereavement. Wow, and I just walked in and felt like a fraud because I thought I shouldn't be here because the person hasn't passed away. I'm not bereaved, but I'm suffering loss. And I just felt it was separate. So I think for anybody that's experiencing it, definitely finding a coach or a counsellor that you can talk through your emotions with.
Yeah.
Because I'm a talker. I tell everybody everything, I did spend a lot of time with my friends. The problem is when you talk to your friends is that they're already emotionally invested in you. So whether you've known them a year, 5 years, or your life, they have a knowledge of you. They have pre-existence with you. So they will have that with your ex-partner. And friends are fantastic, but they don't always offer the best responses because they're emotionally attached. So it's better to be able to talk to somebody who does sit like a counsellor or a coach from a professional perspective and be able to offer a non-judgmental view and allow the person to explore their own emotions. So I think that's really key. When you're talking to friends, you'll hear a lot of, I would never do, I would throw his
Everyone's got
out.
an opinion. Yeah.
I'd burn him. I would never, I'd be saying this, I'd be saying that. And when you live it, it's very different.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So you went into counseling you began to train as a counselor. You went on your own inner journey. How available were you at that point to actually be with someone else? What did you think about the idea of being with another guy?
Well, and this is quite interesting because it was my cousin actually that said to me, you should try the dating apps. And I was absolutely like, not a chance, no way, I'm not doing that. So for me, my husband, who's ex now, obviously, but at the time we were still married, he was the be all and end all. And I had him on a pedestal up here. And there was
Mm,
nobody that was going to match him. This is how I
mm,
felt. Nobody was going to be the same as him. And I had really got to that point in my life. And she said,
mm.
there's plenty more fish in the sea. And I said, no, there's only one fish in the sea, and it was him. But that's that's my mindset at the time.
Where you were at, yeah.
Anyway, she came around one night. She said, just do it, just do it. So I did sign up to this one dating site.
And
And
how long had you been single at this point?
well, it wasn't very long. And I probably should
Okay.
give a bit of a background because I won't go too much into circumstances and what was said, but a lot of, I was told a lot of mean things, because you do you do when you're rowing with somebody, people say nasty things. So I was fat and I was ugly and I was spotty, and no wonder they'd had an affair, no wonder they'd found someone else because I was no good, and it was my confidence and my self-worth was just on the floor.
Wow.
So, when my cousin came around and we had a glass of wine and we were chatting and everything, and she said, just do it. She said, you won't, it might really be good for you because there are lots of other people out there. So anyway, so I did. I signed up, and I sort of, it's a weird feeling, this online dating. And I remember scooching through and finding this one guy who was gorgeous. And I thought, oh, maybe there are some attractive guys out there. And I went on a lovely date with him. And I never forget, we had a lovely evening, and I thought he was so like polar opposites. Where my ex-husband was relatively short, this guy was over 6 foot. He was ex-army, he was a good body, worked out. And I remember him walking back to my car, and he sort of held his arm up and shielded me from the rain to kiss me. And it was just so romantic. And it really lifted my confidence.
Yeah.
And I think that was great. And I think that there's different trains of thought when people have gone through a breakup as to when do they get back out there and find someone else. I sort of threw myself into it then because I almost needed that. At that point, I was still coming from an external sense of worth. I didn't live from self-worth. I lived from other people and what they thought of me. So I sort of threw myself into that. But I do think it's a very personal journey. Some people don't want to do that. I almost felt like I needed it to sort of like my inner goddess came out. I talked about this the other day with a client. It's like your inner goddess comes out and you can just be like wonderful. And like, it was great. It was a great experience. For a time, for a period of time, but I think everybody's story is different as to when they want to go back out there and start meeting other people. And but I mean, I liked the dating process. I liked the fact that I would meet up with somebody for a drink, or I'd meet up with somebody for a meal, and it was getting to know the people, and it was an opportunity to sort of get dressed up and somebody be interested in me and me to be interested in someone else, and sort of find out actually it's not all about this one person. There are other people out there that I will connect with, as I found.
I really hear you on this, because quite a few women I've worked with over the years have, in their early days, straight out of the marriage, and a marriage that has been a bit like your story, from they met at school, or they met at college, high school, university, and they'd only been with that one person, or maybe they'd been another before then, but to be honest, their sexual history was really that one person, and they suddenly find themselves let loose. And it's an opportunity to explore all sorts of different desires and fantasies, men, women, multiple people, one person, like all the things. And it's a real permission piece for them, actually, to allow themselves to go out and explore who they are and tap into who they are. And it's not about meeting the soulmate. It's not about meeting the one. It's about self-expression, it's about exploration. It's, you know, it's a little journey in its own right,
Yeah.
until they, and for some it is about getting external validation because maybe it's been missing for so many years. And while we know it to be true that ultimately the the most powerful, the most lasting, the most loving validation is what we can give to ourselves, we're human beings that thrive on connection, and there is something to be said for receiving validation from somebody. Like, I would, you know, I love it when my husband tells me he thinks I'm beautiful, and you know,
Yeah.
I love that validation. It'll never ever go away. But yeah, that can be part of someone's journey, and it is a real permission piece to allow yourself to explore if that feels like your path. So coming back to your inner journey, which has taken you to become a counselor and a coach, would you feel comfortable sharing some of the bigger pieces that you had to overcome, the bigger pieces you worked on, the healing that you experienced to bring you to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. I think that a lot of it was realizing, I guess, and accepting what I'd been through, I suppose. When you're in it, you kind of, it's just life and you're sort of used to it. But on the outside, I think to myself, why did I put up with that? And why did I allow that? So I think it's just certain things that were said, certain behaviors that I then sort of accepted almost. Oh, I'm no good at that because I'd been told I was no good at that. Like, for example, cooking. And my
Right.
ex-husband always used
Yes.
to cook. So then for a long time, in my head, internally, because I'd been told I was no good at cooking. So actually, then that was a massive journey for me internally because obviously I live alone with my two boys.
Yeah.
So it's just the three of us. I do have a partner that I've been with for a long time now, and I love him dearly. We don't
I
live
can't wait to
together.
talk about that and how
Yeah,
that happens.
yeah. I love him dearly, but we don't live together. So in my home, it's me and my boys. And I then had to take on all the roles. And I think that's a big sort of inner journey as well, because there was a lot of pressure. I suddenly felt I had to bring in two incomes because there was just me, but I still had everything else that was going out. It sounds really silly, like the jobs that you do in your partnership. So he would take the bins out,
Yeah.
you know, I would put the hoover around. You know, now I have to do it all. No one's doing it for me.
Yeah.
But actually, I
Yeah.
found it quite empowering, to be honest with you, because in a way, there's no one that's going to do it other than me. So if it doesn't get done, it doesn't get done. You know, there's no one to moan to.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
when you're in a partnership, you can end up going, oh, it's your turn to do that, or you've
Yeah.
left this out, or you've done that. And
But
there isn't
I know
anyone to do it.
you're talking about really kind of basic practical logistics of running a household, and yet, and even, but what I'm hearing you say is that you were reclaiming all of you and all of your roles, like your ability to do it all, and
Yeah, yeah,
remember that actually if I want to cook, I can cook, and there's something empowering in that, rather than you've
yeah,
kind of defined a role where, well, he's the cook and I'm not. But it's
that's
quite
right.
empowering to take that responsibility on.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
inner strength that you need to do that.
Yeah.
So it's because don't forget, I mean, I'd been with him for a long time, for
Yeah.
20 years, other than we had that
Right.
little break in the middle, but I was younger, you know, so
Yeah.
I didn't really have a lot of responsibilities like I had at the point we broke up.
Yeah.
So it took a lot of inner strength and a lot of courage. And like I say, I am a talker. And I think talking has helped massively. And I mean, I talk to my partner, I mean, and he's heard it all, you know, and he's been a fantastic support. And my mum, I talk to my mum a lot, and I talk to my friends. But I think when people keep it in, it can really weigh you down.
Yeah.
So I think that
Yeah.
is part of my was part of my journey and part of my, I want to say, success, because when I was going through, I never thought I'd get to this point here. You know, I
Yeah. Right.
remember
Right.
feeling so unhappy. I just
Yeah.
felt like happiness was never going to happen again. I thought, I am
Mm.
never going to be happy. How can I be happy? And I look back to that person now, and this is what I teach with my clients. And I say, you will get there. You know, you have to almost trust in the process, because it is a
Yeah.
process. It's an
Yeah.
emotional journey, but it is practical too, because you also have to, you have to go. He used to deal with all the bills. He used to find out all the best deals for the gas and electric. I then
Mm.
had to do it.
Yeah. Right.
And it's very,
Yeah.
it's those little bits that you kind of
Mm.
that build, and like I say, they empower you to move forward, or
Mm.
they can really
Mm.
hinder you, and that's when a coach or a counselor comes in really handy, because they can
As
help you get back on track.
Yeah, as part of that, did you have to redefine then? Were you doing some redefining of roles as a woman, what it means to be a woman, redefining what it means to be a man, what it means to be a wife, a husband, a partner, a mother, a father? Was there a redefining of that for you to take you where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I used to love calling myself a wife. I
Hmm.
loved that. I
Hmm.
remember the shame feeling attached to, I'm going to be divorced. I'm getting a divorce. That's a failure. And
Mm.
if anyone has ever been through it, or is anyone going through it, I'm sure they'll um, be able to connect with this. But there is a real feeling of shame,
Mm.
and that's very difficult. And then I fell into victim. And
Right.
when you fall into victim mode, it can keep you really stuck. So for a long time, I was in victim mode. You know, it was, he had left me, he had had the affair, woe is me, poor me. And I
Yeah.
had to claw myself out of that.
And how did you overcome that victim
Do you know what?
mentality?
It's by accepting your role in what happened.
Mm.
So I had to accept a responsibility, to
Mm.
take responsibility for my part that I played in the breakdown of the marriage.
Yeah.
Um, it's a difficult place to be, because there's a massive part of you that says, but it wasn't my fault, um, I never cheated. But
Mm.
actually, it's that there obviously was something not right,
Yeah.
to be able to
Yeah.
go to cheat. So you have to, it's an
Yeah.
acceptance. You have to accept, and you have to become aware. So becoming aware of your feelings and your
Mm.
emotions, and what that means for you as well, because sometimes our emotions or our feelings are not from whatever's going on the surface, but they're from way deeper.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's again, it all comes down to the therapy and the therapeutic process that I've been through over the course of those years, that
Yeah.
gets you to that point and gets you through it.
Yes, absolutely. What did you believe about where were you at on calling in someone else? Like, what did you think about men? What did you think about your ability to have another relationship? Where were you at on that?
Well, like I say, I think because I still came from a place of external worth, that I became my, like I said, my inner goddess came out. So I was like all in. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, let's go on a date. This is great. And I just embraced it in a way,
Yeah.
because I think, because I'd spent only in the period where obviously we were breaking up, so we were rowing. But, when you've got somebody screaming in your face that you're ugly and you're not worthy, it's hard.
Yeah.
So I completely switched. So yeah, I guess with men, um, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the attention, I suppose, from them.
Yes.
The people that I sort of went on dates with and everything, it was fulfilling to a point,
Mm.
but there was always something lacking. So it was nice for the attention, and it was
Yeah.
good fun, and it was a
Yeah.
distraction, because I think that helps too.
Yeah.
Um, but it was, yeah, finding my partner now was way more fun.
Yeah. Oh, I want to talk about that. Now we've got a comment here that it's quite a long one, so I'm just going to
Okay.
have a quick read of it. Sarah Singer covered up for my husband's behavior and kept it all inside for almost 20 years. Then when I had enough of it, I was resentful that I'd done that for him. Yet he was trying to turn even my own family against me. I felt another layer of betrayal that I'd protect him. Of course, now I realized that I was facilitating his behavior and was choosing to join the deception and lies. And all he was doing was being true to his character. I now take responsibility for my role in that. Beautiful, Sarah. Way to overcome the victim. Yeah, that's very beautiful. Very, very beautiful.
And that's what I was talking about, actually, with that acceptance of your part. I mean, it's not to say that you're wrong at all.
Sure.
You know, that is just life, and life sort of happens, and we learn to, and I talk about this a lot, but it all comes down to the basic human instinct of fight or flight. So when you're sort of, you know, covering up the other partner's behavior, that's your survival instinct. So you're just surviving in the life that you know, that you feel that you want and everything. And the person will naturally try to turn other people against you because they point the finger so that it's not on them. It makes them feel better, you know. But yeah, it was lovely to read the comment there, to see Susan being really empowering. It's exactly.
Yeah. So okay, so let's move into the love story. Let's move into, like, how did you meet your guy now?
Okay, so we did meet online.
Okay.
So I had actually got to the point where I was quite disillusioned with it all. You know, I'd been on a few dates. It had, you know, you do have to kind of, I was very selective. So I used to keep my profile closed, and then I would open up, and it was a bit weird because you'd feel like you go shopping. So you would open up your profile and you'd sort of flick through, oh, he looks nice. And no. And then you'd have a few messages, you'd respond. And I'd got to the point where I was like, no, I'm done with this. And I saw Matt's, his name's Matt. I saw his picture and I thought, oh, okay. And I just literally dropped him a message that said, hey. That was it, because I was so disillusioned with it all. And I was sort of like getting to the point where I was like, no, this is never going to work. And I'm never going to find anyone genuine. Or someone that is really for me. Because the nice thing about online dating, of course, is that you can read a few things about people that you think, okay, we've got similar interests, we like the same things, or where do we live in comparison to each other? And so you can do all of that. Whereas actually when you're face to face meeting people for the first time, you can't really ask them all those things. Otherwise it feels a bit like an interview. So, so I dropped him a hey. He was very similar. He didn't really, although he was on there, he didn't really actively he wasn't actively looking for anybody. And he sort of thought, oh, I'll have a look at this message. And then I literally I think he replied, you know, something like, well, that was a lot of words, hey, or something. And I just said, if you want a message, here's my number. And that was it. And I kind of give him my number.
Wow.
And because I found that I didn't really like being on there, and like I kept my profile closed all the time unless I was actually on there. And it allowed me to cut to the chase. It allowed me to go, if the person I don't like them, I just block them on my number, then they can't contact me. And I'll never forget it, because it took a while before we could talk. And I remember we were supposed to talk one night, and I had to delay it for some reason. And his response was, okay, I'll put my nightie on. And it just really made me laugh. And I thought, okay, so he's got a sense of humor. And we spoke on the phone later that night. And then it took ages to actually get together. He was in a show, he was working, I was busy. And it really took a long time to get together. So then the first time, it's quite a few months later, the first time that we met in a coffee shop for coffee. And kind of never looked back, really.
So do you know what I think is really interesting about this is, so because from my perspective, when it comes to dating and so on, is I'm all about the energetics. I believe that if you're a vibrational match, we are a vibrational match to whoever we're calling in. And when it comes to online dating, while it's important, the profile picture and the words in your profile and what you say, like how you reach out, like you just said hey, right? So I have a mastermind called Daring and Mighty Love, and I have different coaches in there as part of that. And I have a celebrity dating coach, James Priest. He's amazing, right? Like, he is proper big time dating coach, and he runs a masterclass and coaches the women in my group personally on their profile. So he picks them apart, and he's really brutal, and it's wonderful. And the girls are really up for it. It's a very empowering experience. He's like, no, get rid of that picture. No, you need a picture that looks like this. You can't say that. And then, this is how you reach out. This is how you instigate conversations. Excuse me. And it's all great. And it does play a part. I'm not saying it's not important, because there is an importance to it. And there's something about these women actually getting their profiles set up in a way that has them feel really good, that is actually part of their energy vibration. And then someone like you comes along and says, well, I just wrote, hey, and I hardly looked at it. And there was no real, you went on when it felt good, which is very empowered feminine. It felt good to go onto the app. So you went on, you checked in, and obviously you felt it. Like, it just felt good to kind of say, here's my number if you want to, I'm sure you felt something there. I feel like your intuition was alive at that point, because I'm sure you wouldn't have just given out your number to any Tom, Dick, or Harry, right?
No, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
But interestingly, when you're saying all of that, is that when I met him, and I've said this all the time, I felt drawn to him.
Yeah.
So he remembers me telling him on our first coffee meeting, I'm seeing other people, I'm having dates with other people. He remembers me saying that. And I remember I had been on a couple of dates with the same guy a few times. And I just remember from the minute I met Matt thinking, oh no, there's this kind of, I don't know, it's like an inner connection almost. Yeah. And the weird thing is, and you're probably like this, is that I've been writing in my secret journal. So this, the secret. So I've been writing in the journal, and I truly believe I manifested him. So I wrote down all the things I wanted in a partner. And then I was watching, at the time, I was watching The Blacklist. And there was the actor that was playing, he was the husband, but he turned out to be a baddie in the end. And I sort of really fancied him, this guy. So I thought, okay, I remember that program, The Blacklist, and I remember him and I fancied him. I'm going to put that picture. So I got this picture of this guy. And the first picture I ever sort of had on my phone of Matt, I mean, they could be identical people. It's scary. Wow. Yeah, it's really scary. And and I always say to him, I say, oh, I manifested you. And he's like, thanks. Because he had a tough time with going through my divorce, because he experienced it as well. So he was there throughout the whole thing, So and I do think as well, a lot of men or women, I guess, depending on which way, if he'd have known what my journey was going to be like, would he have stuck around? But he did stick around. And I think a lot of people wouldn't have been able to do that, because it was almost daily. There was something else and something else and something else. And it was hard for him being sort of on the other side of it, as the partner.
Yeah. I've been in that position before. I lived through my partner, the father of my child, his divorce for many years. Right. And it was tough. And I would actually say that would have contributed to the ultimate downfall of it, because it was just so disempowered, actually. I don't think it helped us at all.
Yeah. And he was great at listening. He was great at advice, but it was nothing he could do. And he felt so, I think he felt so helpless for a period of time. And for a lot of the time as well, when we did meet, first of all, we used to have to just date in coffee shops. And we spent forever in different coffee shops in the different shopping centres near us, and just going for meals and going to the arcades. It was just really funny, because we couldn't really, I didn't want anybody coming into the children's lives anyway. And we were still living under the same roof at that point too. So, for a good sort of year at least or so, we just had to sort of date outside, essentially, which would have been fine in the pandemic, I suppose. But yeah.
So how do you think the inner work that you did, the counseling and so on that you experienced, how do you think that has contributed to the relationship that you have now?
I think I'm more assertive.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I'm okay on my own. So before, when I was married, I would hate being on my own. And the work that me and my ex-husband did take us away. So he would go away or I would go away for work. And it's not that I couldn't be in the house on my own. So no, there's a lot of people that don't like to be on their own, you know.
Mm.
I just didn't like to be on my own. So not to go to sleep and go to bed or whatever, but as in I'd have friends round, you know. So at the beginning of breaking up and living on my own, so when my ex moved out, I had this real fear of, I used to fill my time. Like there was no
Mm.
block of time that was empty. And there was always somebody, there was something I was doing that was going to stop me being on my own. And I just had this, I just didn't like it. I had a real fear.
Mm.
Now I love it. And I
Yeah, me
think,
too.
yeah, so sort of my life, the way it works is that I have the kids, and then when they go to their dads, they go every other weekend on a Friday. And at the moment, they go for 5 nights every Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Friday, I work, so I teach in a school, and then I come home. And when it's the Friday that they've gone, the old me would have been, and I do remember this at the beginning of my relationship with Matt, feeling like, well, why aren't you coming round? You should come round. You should come and be with me, because I don't want to be on my own. That was the subliminal message. But, you know, he was like, well, you know, I'm busy, or I'm doing something else, or I'm working or whatever.
Mm.
And now, he even said the other day to me, he said, if I was to say I'd come round on a Friday, you'd probably say no. And I was like, oh, maybe. Because I really like it. I like getting in. It's just me and the dog.
Yeah.
And I put
Yeah.
my feet up and I watch whatever I want to watch on the telly, and I have a glass of wine and I
Yeah.
have just my dinner on my lap, and I don't have to do anything,
Yeah.
you know, and I really enjoy that. And then he comes on the Saturday and we have the lovely weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And then depending on what I'm doing, he'll either go back home to his on the Monday, and then I've got a couple of days before the kids come back. So again, I'm just much more comfortable in my own skin, being on my own. And I think, again, that comes from self-worth.
Yes.
So it comes from, you know, we come into this world on our own. We leave this world on our own. And it's about relying on yourself and appreciating yourself and loving yourself. I think self-love is key. Like if somebody would have said to me years ago, do you love yourself? I'd have said no. And that was like almost, again, a shameful thing. Whereas now I'd embrace that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would embrace that now. But yeah, so very different, because I think he's allowed me. So he's such a different person. We're much more aligned in our outlook on life. You know, he massively can't deal with infidelity on any level. You know, he doesn't even like it if he's got a friend who says that they've cheated on their partner, then he's not really interested in being friends with the person, because he just thinks it's wrong. So that's a huge thing. But we've got so many things that we enjoy together that's completely just us.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's got his own life, I've got my own life, and it works. So I think that's a massive contributor.
So yeah, that's a big piece, isn't it? Do you feel that that's something that was missing in your marriage, that you didn't have a separate life, that you didn't have ownership of yourself? That
No, not necessarily, because I think because we were both self-employed, we both had our own careers. I think that I did have that. I think a huge part of it, and I don't know how open we can be on these because I don't know who's watching, but a huge part is the sexual side of things. Because that was very lacking in my marriage, but is not in this partnership, which is huge, which I never put any importance on. Whereas my ex always put importance on it, and I never did, because I didn't think it was necessarily that important. But actually, now in the relationship I'm in now, it's great.
yeah, and
I kind of rediscovered my love for that.
Absolutely. Well, that's all about, again, there's a vibrational match there, isn't there? Like you
Oh,
need to,
absolutely.
I mean, that's, yeah, and it's, I personally believe, very important part of a relationship. And there's lots of different types of relationships. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's working for you, and that's a big
Yeah.
difference. What else would
Yeah.
you say is different
A
in,
massive thing, I think, is I'm a bit of a person who I get really excited about new ideas. Like
mm,
new business, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, and I get really excited. And my ex used to knock me down for that, you know. And it was a bit of a joke. It was like, oh, what's she up to next? What's her next harebrained
mm,
idea? It was all these kind of like, what's the next thing? Whereas Matt supports it all.
wow. Mm,
Sometimes I need someone to pull me back, and he will do that, but he'll do it in a supportive way. So he won't just
mm,
knock me down. And if he's ever sort of gone, he will go, oh, what now? And I'll explain it, and they go, oh, okay, I can see why. So he will look at it from a sort of very subjective place
mm, mm.
or objective place, whereas before I was just sort of kind of knocked down. It was so that's very
Yeah,
different, very, very different.
yeah. It's interesting as well for you to model the different living arrangements, because I know that the women that are going to be really most enjoying this series of interviews is they're obviously single and they're wondering what's possible in the second part of their life.
Yeah,
And and it's really nice to see different women model different relationship styles, different arrangements, and so on, because it just proves that anything is possible. You just get to choose what feels really good and aligned for you. So you guys have chosen at the moment to live separately, and so you've got you and your boys, and he's separate, and he comes and stays every other weekend by the sounds of it,
yeah.
or vice versa. But that's when you see each other sort of privately. Um, so I love that you model that. And do you think that you guys will ever want to live together? Are there plans around that?
Do you know what? We do talk about it. And I think this was quite a huge thing for me at the beginning, because I perceived normal, and I do that because there is no
Mm,
normal,
right.
stereotypical, but there's not normal. And I
Yeah.
think when my ex moved out, I felt very much like almost desperate to get back
Mm,
the me, him, kids, not the ex-husband. I just mean as in that standard
sure.
sort of partners you're living together
Yeah.
and you're together. And it was one Sunday as well, actually, and it really got me. I remember coming home. Bearing in mind, I'm still in the family home, so I bought out my ex-husband, so I'm still in the house that
Right.
we bought
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And it was Sunday, and I was very aware that the people around me that I sort of spent a lot of time with were all in their family units, and I was just me. And
Yeah.
I got really quite sad about that. And I think
Mm,
I put a lot of emphasis on I need to live with someone. I need to be in that normal life. I need to
mm,
have, so he needs to move in. Because I remember my mum saying to me at the very beginning, she said, well, you might meet somebody that you wants to live with you, and, it would be very different.
yeah.
And it just hasn't worked out like that. And I think through our relationship, Matt and I think there was a point where I would be like, why is he not living with me? What's different? Whereas now I'm like, no, thanks. I really like what my life is. And he
Yes.
does too.
Yeah.
And I think whilst my children are younger, see, he grew up with a stepdad,
Yeah.
and he's got the nicest stepdad, the nicest mum. He's got the
Yeah.
fantastic family. But he'd always say he doesn't want to be a dad to my children. He'd like
Mm,
to be their friend, but he doesn't encroach on my time with them, because he's very much,
mm,
you should spend, they're only little for a certain period of time. Like my youngest
mm.
still gets into bed with me in the middle of the night,
Oh.
and he's 11. No, he's 12. Sorry, now he turned 12 in April.
Yeah.
And he still gets in, and I love it. And if we
Yeah.
were together, my son probably wouldn't do that. And I
Yes.
think actually they're only little. I've only got a few more years, and then they're going to be on their own journeys of their lives and
Yeah.
whatever they're
Yeah.
doing. And I think that's when potentially Matt and I will hopefully maybe live
Yes.
together. I mean, I do think I'll
Yeah.
always, and he will always want our own space,
Mm,
and I think, and I do talk to a lot of people actually, and they say, you've got it the right way round. So many people I speak to that are kind of in relationships, even if it's with the father of their children or not with the father of their children. Like another partner, they're living together, but they're not biologically the same, or blended families. A lot of them will say to me, "Oh, you've got it so right. You've got it so right." And I was like, well, it's hard at times because lots of practicalities fall on me on my own. But I really look forward to seeing Matt. We have our little thing that we do at the weekend. We always have a curry, and we like to go walking. So we hike and we go walking, and we love that. We call the dog out. He's our dog. He's our fur baby, and we have a fantastic time together. And there's none of the. I haven't got to pick up his pants. I haven't got to do his washing.
So you found a way of existing that just really suits you guys, and that's. I mean, I know somebody who has been married for many years and lives next door to her husband.
Oh,
they have separate houses, but they're next door, and they take turns staying at each other's houses, but they're kind of there but separate. Why not? There's so many different ways of doing relationship. And you're modeling what works for you right now while you have young children, and I think that's very beautiful modeling. I know there's going to be a lot of women watching this because that's part of it, isn't it? It's like, at what point do you introduce the kids, and how involved do you want your children to be with the new person, and so on. So all these considerations.
My boys, they really like Matt. He's great with them, but he doesn't put himself on them in that respect. So he's only ever stayed here when they're here, probably a handful of times, and he won't sleep in my bed if he stays here. He'll sleep in his spare room because he said, but Cooper still gets into your bed. So I don't want that. I don't want to be the reason that doesn't happen.
Wow.
And I kind of didn't get that at first. I didn't understand that at first. And obviously I was also watching my ex move in with the woman he had the affair with, and they've set up their home, and they're all living together with her kids and my kids when they're there. And I sort of thought, why have I not got that? Why have I not got that normal? But actually I've got so much more.
You're creating your own normal.
Yeah. And Matt and I have a lot of freedom when the boys are off with their dad. Matt and I can do whatever we want, and it's really quite freeing, because a lot of the time when you've got children, you don't necessarily get that free time to do the things that you want to do.
Absolutely.
I think as well as women, we can become, when we have children, we can become all about them, and we lose a bit of ourself in that. And then obviously they've got their lives when they fly the nest and they move out and they do their own. Where does that leave us?
It sounds to me like you having time without the boys as well every other weekend is another opportunity for you to reclaim yourself and find yourself and develop and deepen your relationship with yourself. And now in a relationship.
Don't get me wrong, it is heartbreaking even now when they go. I don't like it when they go, but I think it's important for them to spend time with the other parent, as long as the other parent is treating the children right. So it's important for the children to spend time with us, and I really had to work on that because I hated not having my children all the time. Like, I felt like a part-time mum. And I think that anybody here who's got children that has gone through that and has to share the kids will understand what I mean by that. It's a horrible time, and it's a horrible emotion. It does get easier, but it'll always be there. I never like it when they go on the Friday. I do enjoy my time on my own, but I always feel sad when they go. But I know they're having a great time.
I developed a very spiritual perspective on this in the early years because my son's dad and I split when he was 2, and we went 50-50 from then. So we were immediately week on. Well, it wasn't quite week on, week off, but it was a 50-50 split. And I used to find that difficult, and now it's just our normal life. I mean, we've been doing that for 12 years now. It's this is all we know. And my perspective on it is just remembering that on a soul perspective, he chose his dad and he chose me. And because he, on a soul level, chose both of us, who am I to ever stand in the way of that. And like you said, while
Yeah.
his dad is a great dad and loves him dearly, and it's a very healthy relationship,
Yeah.
who am I standing in the way of that? And yeah, it breaks my heart. I miss my baby, I want to go. And I mean, now it's so normal. We don't really, there's not a lot of emotion around it now. It's just that's how we live our lives. But I tell you what, boy, does he get the best of me when he's here. I'm so much more patient and
Yeah.
available and loving and all the things. And he gets that from his dad too. So he gets like a double up of really like present parents, because each of us only have him half the time.
It's funny when you use that word available, actually, because when my son, my eldest, was going through a bit of bad time, so he developed OCD quite badly, and he had a lot of anxiety, and people noticed it. You know, they'd say, "Oh, he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders." It was horrible for him, and I managed to get him to have a counselling session. And he didn't want to go back, and obviously it's led by the children, so he went. But what they said to me was, it would be really good for you to have counselling so that you're emotionally available for when he needs you.
Yes.
And I thought that was really key, because they couldn't help him because he was refusing it. He said he didn't want to go back. He just thought they were going to stop him playing football. I don't know why. He was so scared that they're going to tell him he couldn't play football, that he didn't want to go anywhere near him. And now they're great. My kids are great. They're happy boys. You know, they're loving, and we have a really good relationship. But I did feel for him then, but I thought that made such a lot of difference. It was about being available for them to be able to, you know, whatever they've got going on in their lives, they can come to me, and they know that.
And this is, you know, and we have to wrap up in a minute because we're nearly on the hour. But this is, you know, this speaks to, again, on a whole other level, the importance of doing your inner work. It's not just to the benefit of yourself. It's not just to the benefit of, you know, calling in your vibrational match. Our kids benefit enormously because we get to be the best version of ourselves for them. We have way more emotional capacity for them. Our availability to them is incredibly heightened, and they deserve that. They need that. Oh, Andrea, thank you so much for your time today. It was so wonderful to hear you share your story. Thank you.
You're welcome. I've really enjoyed it. So I hope that it's been helpful for ladies that have been listening, and hopefully there's some sort of tips in there to take away to be able to get to where we want to get to.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful, because every single woman I've spoken to has modeled something different, and yet there's a common thread through every conversation. And that's the importance of, you know, having a powerful relationship with ourselves first and foremost. How can we expect to have that with someone else if we don't have it with ourselves first, you know? And hope and inspiration that you can call in soulmate love in part 2 of your life. So this is amazing.
Absolutely.
Oh, honey, thank you so much. Really, really good to meet you. Really good to hear your story. And for those of you watching on the replay, please type in #replay. Let me know that you've seen this. And I'll be back with more. Actually, I'm not back tomorrow. Taking tomorrow off, taking my little man to hospital, actually. He's got a little operation. But back on Friday with our final interview on Friday. 2 weeks is over already. I can't believe it. Anyway, thanks again for joining. Mwah, sending you lots of love. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.